Welcome back, everybody, to the Scaled Success Reptile Podcast. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. We got a really exciting um, guest today. So, we're gonna welcome here in a quick update what we got going on here in our world. Babies are fully hatched. This weekend we have a show, Repticon, Orlando, Florida. So if you guys are in the area and maybe looking to add a couple hognose to your collection or many other what's it called many other reptiles or animals, check that out. It's a really good show. I'm actually going to be vending with Emilio via the Reptiles and Paul from For Real 3Ds. We're going to have a couple tables together, so it's going to be, stop by our table, say hi, grab a hognose, a ball python, and some 3D prints. So that's what we got going on. Like I said, we have a good amount of babies from 2024. We still have a handful of stuff from 2023, some really high-end project stuff, Arctic Sable, Het Toffee stuff, AAA, Het Lavender female, males. And then I think we even might have like some Het Albino males that are basically going to be ready to go for, the 2024 season, or 2025 season, or if you got a late 2024 season, you can probably plug those males in already. So let me know. Check our morph market out in the description below. Our link tree and our morph market, it's all ready to go there. So other than that, I'm trying to think. We're going to be, as usual, we're releasing once a week. We release a video of just what's going on here on our, our reptile journey, hatching animals. Right now, it's going to be mostly about the babies are hatching, descriptions on what's going on, genetics on it, the ratio of male and female. So go check that out. And I think that's pretty much it on our end. Other than this couple shows coming up, Orlando, this show now this weekend in Orlando is gonna restart our show season. We took about a month or two off of shows just because not worth doing shows with 10 hognose. It's about what we have left from 2023. So Orlando, then we have Daytona in 3 weeks after that. And Daytona dates are, so you guys know, it's going to be August 16th, 17th, 18th. 16th, there's VIPs. If you got your VIP ticket, you come in during vendor setup and take a sneak peek of some of the good stuff that's going to be out there. So if you guys are going to go there, looking forward to seeing you guys. Stop by the table, say hi. I forgot what table I am, but I'm in the main room. So make sure you guys stop by. And then after that, I said it's rolling. Then it's Dallas and RBC Dallas. A couple weeks after that, and September is going to be busy. I think we have 3 shows in September, and then October we're going to have Scaled Expo here in West Palm Beach, Florida, as well. You know what I'm doing? I'm going to post a schedule of all the shows that we have ready to go, and that we're planning to vend for the rest of the year, so you guys can keep a track on that and what's going on there. So let's say what's up real quick to everybody that's in here. Sammy Vargas from Bull Pythons, thanks for joining in, buddy. Eric's Morph Factory, what's going on? Another South Florida guy. Green Line Morse, what's up? Thanks for joining. Golf Reptiles, Casey, thanks for joining, man. One of our YouTube members here. So if you guys are looking for, some exclusive content on about hognose, and we're gonna actually do something really cool starting next month. We're gonna do a at least once a month live videos on just talking hognose. If you guys are starting into the hognose and want to get some tips about breeding and just how to build your collection, join the membership. The hognose expert tier is the one's going to have access to that. So if you guys are interested in that, join. And then I am going to have probably some some other hognose breeders that have a good amount of more experience than I do with hognose and other species, join in some of those live chats that's going to be available only to the members. So thanks for joining, Casey, again. And without further ado, let's bring on the our guest, and start talking, because he has a lot of cool species, and I have a lot of questions because there's a lot of species that he's working with that, are brand new to me. I have, about 0% knowledge of them. So he's definitely gonna do a lot of explain a lot of about the husbandry and keeping of those animals. Love and V Dubs, thanks for joining. What's going on? So guys, without further ado, we're gonna bring on Eddie. Welcome, Eddie. Welcome to Scaled Success Reptile Podcast.
What's up? How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. I'm doing good, man. It's funny because like I've had thoughts, through the times we've seen each other, especially at Repticons and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I gotta ask him to come on the podcast. And then with the shows and everything that that it passes my mind.
Yeah,
So I'm glad I finally got around to asking and having you on because you got
finally
some
did it.
really cool species.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I try.
So, for a quick, intro of yourself, who you are, what are you, what's your main species you're breeding, and where are you from?
Eddie Soto from Eddie Soto Exotics, Central Florida, Orlando, Kissimmee. I breed too many things, a lot of species. Jewel Lacertas, bearded dragons, Rankin's dragons, Australian water. Did I say Australian water dragons? Lots of tortoises. You name it, I probably have done it, or I will be doing it. Probably forgetting a bunch of stuff, but it's a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said when I was in the intro, is you have some really interesting species, especially the lizards. Do you have any snake species?
So currently, I don't have any snakes, but
Okay.
I started this whole like reptile career in snakes. A lot of people don't know
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
I started in the ball python world in the mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if you based on talking to Emilio, obviously our
Mm-hmm.
mutual friend, him and his story and my story almost happened at the same time. The time frame's pretty much identical. Back when everything was still kind of like it was the wild, wild west. Uh, the ball python breeders wanted to step on you and just not share information with you, and
Mm-hmm.
prices were crazy, ridiculous for 1 to 2 gene animals. 3 genes were still a handful of animals, but 4 genes was not even a thing yet. I did that for years, and I honestly got bored of it. I got bored because the mystery was kind of over with me. Simple 2 gene animals were like, oh, what I wonder what that looks like, and that
Yeah.
quickly disappeared over time with everyone jumping into it. And I probably stopped with the ball pythons in 2000 and maybe 11. So I did it from 2007. The first ball python I bred was 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped breeding. I stopped breeding them in 2011, and I've just branched into other stuff. I did some colubrids, different species of pythons on and off, and then I just got stuck with the lizards and slowly just got rid of all the snakes. I did Angolan pythons for years, children's pythons, spotted pythons, uh, colubrids. I did Mexican black kings before they were popular. You couldn't
Yeah.
give these things away. Nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
And $50 was like too much. And now, fast forward, everybody wants them, and they're ridiculous. But yeah, no snakes now. Eventually, I'll get
Yeah.
back into them.
Yeah. You know, and being in the reptile, especially breeding for so long already, and talking about like, example Mexican Black Kings, how the circle turns over, right? Where nobody wants them, and now, they're big movers and people are
Yeah.
looking for them and stuff like that. Um, I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of that within the
Oh
amount of
yeah.
years that you have into the
Yeah.
breeding.
Oh yeah. Countless species that no one
Yeah.
cared about. Uh, Again, the Mexican Black Kings, I couldn't give them away. I could, if I threw them at you, you would throw them back at me.
Hmm.
Uh, what's another species that people wanted back then? Oh man. So in the mid 2000s, everyone was so ball python focused
Hmm.
that no one cared about other species. So I had ringed pythons at one point, Bismarck ring pythons. I had like really nice diamond pythons and diamond crosses, and I got them really cheap too. And nobody cared. Nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
And now those same animals are crazy expensive. When I had Angolans, I mean, they were still they were a good price. I was selling babies for probably $800, but no one really wanted them. And then
Hmm.
I sold my pair a while ago, which that's probably one of the only snake species I regret selling. Um, and now they're like, I think minimum 900 a baby. Everybody
Yeah.
wants them. There was a guy at Daytona last year that had a whole bunch, and I think he sold out super quick. Where I was, maybe one or two people walked by and knew what they were.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone thought they were a ball python morph, which
Yeah.
really drove me crazy. But no, there's countless species I could go on about that I used to have, and
Yeah.
I can even tell you species that are no longer in the United States because I got rid of them too. So yeah, it's been a good ride for me.
Mhm. And when you started with the ball pythons, were you starting from a keeper, or did start with ball pythons and then dove deep into breeding?
So I had lots of animals, like lots of reptiles that I would hide under my bed for years. I grew up. Both my parents were first generation Puerto Ricans living in
Hmm.
America, so uh, that type of stuff was weird to have. So I was never allowed to have any of that stuff. So I would always hide it like under my bed and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I ended up having a ball python, just a normal ball python, uh, wild caught. This was I probably had it in the maybe mid '90s, probably, and it was a female. I didn't know that yet. Fast forward 2000s, I still had the snake. I never got rid of it, and someone gave me one, like another. They just didn't want it anymore, and I just threw them together, and they were locked up within an hour. This was terrible setup. It was like eco earth, probably not even eco. It was just dirt, uh, some hides, 40-gallon tank, heat light. Again, this is early
Hmm.
2000s, and they locked up within an hour, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I went on internet, and that's when I came across like the breeding. I think it was Marcus Jane. He had like the breeding ingredients and how to do it,
Hmm.
and then I delved into YouTube. Wasn't a thing yet, so I didn't
Yeah.
know anything from that aspect. But there was websites though, and I would go on people's websites, and then that's when I started seeing like pastels. They were pastel jungles, orange ghosts, spiders, and piebalds and albinos, and then from there I was hooked. And then when YouTube started becoming a thing, um, it was Ralph Davis. He was a breeder up north, and that was probably the first time I ever thought of like, hey, I could turn this into an actual uh, business. I could turn this into a career. Because
Yeah.
even when I saw all this stuff online, it was just like a hobby. I didn't think people were actually doing it as a career until I saw Ralph Davis on YouTube showing it
Hmm.
off, and I was like, what the hell? And then since then, I've been hardcore breeding ever since.
Yeah. And even to this day, I feel like when you tell somebody you are a professional reptile breeder, it takes people back still and like, really? That's,
Yeah,
it's funny. I have a quick story. Um, I was working for an electrical supplier before I decided to do reptiles full time. And I was in the area today and I needed some stuff for the house. So I stopped by and I'm talking to one of the managers there and we're just chit chatting in his office. He goes, "Oh, are you still like in the construction business? Are you working?" Because I went from them to working as a project manager for a GC. Um,
yeah,
and I go, "No, man," I go, "I quit. I'm just doing reptiles." And he goes, if that's not a Florida thing, man, that's one of the most Florida things I've heard.
yeah,
But he goes, reptiles, really? I go, yeah, man. It's actually a big industry and stuff like that. He goes, wow. He goes, I would have never thought. You know.
yeah. When I had a really good retail like management job for
Hmm.
probably over 10 years, and when I quit, they asked me where I was going, and I said home,
Yeah,
because I didn't really talk about it that much. So
yeah,
when they found out what I was actually doing, they made it seem like I was killing myself. They were like, "We're so sorry." Like, good. They were basically like, "Good luck."
yeah. Like
Like,
they didn't have any expectations of you
yeah,
succeeding or doing well with it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
that was
because I think if you're not in the reptile world or in the animal world in general, people don't put a value to the
yeah,
animals that we produce and stuff, right?
yeah. When you tell them that you have all these animals, they don't understand like they just think you have all these animals just running around your house, or you have a bunch
Yeah.
of glass tanks somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't really understand the aspect of it.
Yeah. For sure. So are you full-time reptile breeding now? Like this is your bread and butter now?
Yeah, I'm pretty much full time. I do every now and then during like dead seasons and stuff. I
Hmm.
do like odd jobs, like I do like the drive sharing apps,
Hmm.
just to like have extra funds. Because a lot of my stuff doesn't start hatching or breeding until spring and summer.
Yeah.
So in that mid section, I have different sources of income that I can go to, and that will help fund until now, where it's crazy with the eggs hatching and all that.
Hmm. No.
Yeah, it was scary. I went full time. I mean, I was always doing this like part time and stuff. I was doing
Hmm.
reptile shows for probably over 10 years now. Um, but I went full time probably maybe like 6 months before COVID was a thing.
Okay.
And so COVID was not a thing at all. I went
Yeah.
full time, and then once everything started shutting down, I remember saying to myself like, "Wow, I fucked over my family. Like, who's gonna want to?"
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Who's gonna buy animals during like a
Hmm.
pandemic?"
Yeah.
Turned out it was like the best thing that ever happened to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. You know, I've heard people say that, like, when COVID hit, everybody was panicking, right? And people that had bigger collections, stuff like that, like they were getting like, you know, even from the reptile community or from the outside, like, hey, this is too much of a risk. You should sell off, get your money while you can, and stuff like that. And I've heard he goes, and it's one of my good friends, and he's like, if I would have done that, he goes, I would have done worst mistake in my life. He goes, because like you said, COVID, and even a year after COVID was one of the best, some of the best times that the reptile
Yeah, we
industry has
we bought
seen
a
in
we
sales
we
amount.
bought a house during COVID. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, we bought the house during COVID. We had, what else did we have happen? Uh, I mean, we it was very good. My wife, she does tattoos. That's her full time job,
Mhm.
and same thing. Yeah, everyone in the world, they wanted tattoos.
That's
The
cool.
cool thing was, I mean, the cool thing is we live in Florida, so Florida
Yeah.
really didn't shut down like at all.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
I think the Repticon circuit, it was probably closed for a month, and
Mhm.
then a month later it was back full force. I mean, obviously there was a lot of restrictions,
Yeah.
but it didn't skip a beat after that. I mean, I did reptile shows through the entire thing of COVID, with the whole like rules of the mask, and there was like a time period where all the customers had to leave, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was
How was
fun
vending during
times.
COVID? Like with the mask and stuff like that? Did you see
Yeah.
like a difference in the interactions with people and stuff?
Um, there were The scary thing about COVID was there was a lot of people you could tell that were doing like impulse buys,
Mhm.
because they were just home and they didn't know what to buy. So you had like soccer moms and all these people just showing up, and they were just buying animals just to buy animals.
Mm.
Not to say that that's 100% what these people were doing, but there was a lot of that.
Yeah. And and seeing that, it's kind of worrisome because I think we are starting to see a little bit of the fallout of that.
Yeah.
Now
Oh
we're
yeah. Yeah.
starting to see that of the the over buying, overproduction, and not as much movement and stuff. And with you being in it, what, let's say 2007, you started breeding ball pythons, so you have about 10 years in this almost already, of breeding. What has you think what has kept you going through all this, and even through before the COVID thing, where were you making sales already before COVID? Was it
Oh yeah.
just slower?
Yeah. I was, like I said, I was doing. I had the job that I had was really good, so I had weekends off.
Hmm.
So I've been doing Repticons and just general reptile shows since 2014. Um, and again, the cool thing about Florida is there's a show somewhere in the state. Any given
Yeah.
weekend, I'm at a show. We'll be at Orlando together, you and I.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, so I've been doing that for years, but it was never like 100% stable. Slowly and slowly, it got there.
Yeah.
Probably by like 2018, I was comfortable to just, you know, call it quits with that and jump into it.
Yeah. No, and talking about, this weekend you're gonna vend. That's basically your home show, right? The Orlando show.
So technically, the Kissimmee Repticon is my closest show. It's like
Yeah.
10 minutes. Like I
Okay.
could set up at 7 and then
Mhm.
come and eat dinner and eat breakfast with my family if I wanted to.
Nice.
I still say Orlando is my home show because the Orlando show has been going on for 20
Mhm.
plus years. So
Mhm.
I say that's technically my home show. It's only 30 minutes away,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that's always
And it's a
great.
good show, you know.
That's my best show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Orlando's my best show.
It's a really good show.
So I've lived in Central Florida for 30 something years now. So all the people that I went to school with, the people I went to
Mhm.
work with, just people I know in general, they all show up to that show, and
That's cool.
I have a good rapport with all of Central Florida.
That's really cool. Yeah, man. You know, and you do a good amount of Repticons through the year, right? Here in South Florida. Do
Yeah.
you do out of state any out of state expos?
So I do the Atlanta what is it? The Atlanta Reptilian Nations.
Mhm.
Um, I would like to start doing like what you're doing,
Mhm.
Texas and Tinley's and all that stuff. I would
Mhm.
like to jump into that, but so far I'm pretty much just Florida. But I do all the shows in Florida, so
Mhm.
I do have a like a contract technically with Repticon. So I do the Repticons, but if there's a weekend where there's not a Repticon and there's another show,
Yeah.
I'll do it. Like the Scales Expo, obviously the Daytona show I'll be doing.
Mhm.
Some of the show me shows I do pretty well there. Um, but yeah, but when I have gone out of state, I mean, it's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. And the stuff that you have, like, you know, what's your best seller that you put on your table? You know, with you know, either pet level or up to breeding people that are looking to breed them as well.
Yeah, so for pet level, it'd probably be like bearded dragons,
Mhm.
tortoises. The redfoot tortoises are always like a good seller. Those are probably like my top things.
Mhm.
And then all the crazy stuff that you see like on my Instagram or on my Facebook, I save that for like the Daytonas because
Okay.
if I bring that stuff to a Repticon, maybe one person knows what it
Person.
is.
Yeah.
Maybe. Um,
Yeah.
at one point, I was doing a lot of like leopard geckos for the shows, um, but I really wasn't in it. Like I wasn't really feeling the leopard geckos.
Mhm.
They were great. I was doing really well with them, but I just wasn't enjoying them like that. It wasn't fair for the animals. So slowly got out of that. So as far as Repticons go, it's pretty much just bearded dragons, tortoises. Um, so those are like your
Yeah.
staple. Everyone in the world, even if they're not in this world, they know what a bearded dragon is.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. You know, and that's interesting you say because you know once we were talking about doing the podcast, I asked you about a couple of the species that you know you most enjoy with working and some of the stuff that you know, and I wasn't putting two to two together because like I'm like, man, I haven't seen these at the Repticons when I've seen
Yeah,
you and stuff like that. So now it makes sense, you know. You save the hitters for Daytona where it matters, you know,
yeah.
for
It's
sure.
funny because there's people that see that I'm going to one of their local Repticons in their city, so
Yeah,
they get excited.
yeah.
And sometimes they only know me from Instagram, so then
Mhm.
they come to my table all excited, and then they just see like bearded dragons, and they're just like, oh, like where's this and this and this? And I'm like,
Yeah,
well, you would literally be the only one who knows it, and you're
yeah.
probably not going to buy it. You just want to look at it.
Mhm.
Um, but slowly, I'm integrating a lot of that stuff into the shows, and I've done pretty well with it. So like, I'll bring some like weird species of anoles,
Mhm.
and usually every show I'll sell, several of those. But still, the bread and butter, like I said, would be the
Yeah,
dragons.
yeah. Did you start? Did you start dragons? How long ago you've had with the bearded dragons?
2018.
Okay, so you've had them for
Yeah,
a while. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
I started doing them specifically for the show circuit.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then same thing I do. I also breed like the white tree frogs,
Yeah.
um, like by the thousands, and yeah, that those are everyone loves those frogs. They're an easy frog to keep,
Yeah.
um, pet level, awesome frog. It's really hard to like. It's a very forgiving frog, um,
Yeah. No,
and
and they're
I'll
cool
have those
looking.
all
You know,
year.
they have cool colors. With like the snowflake and stuff like that. Is that like a recessive genetic thing, or is it like line
No,
bred?
it's line bred. It's
Okay.
polygenic. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There are some morphs out there, like there's the blue-eyed. That's a
Mhm.
recessive morph.
Mhm.
Um, there's all these other ones coming out now. There's melanistics. There's one called camo. Uh, so they're slowly coming into their morphs as well. But your staples that you're going to see at a reptile show is either going to be your blues, your snowflakes, your normals, and your blue eyes, your honeys, basically.
Okay.
And then the amount of snowflake, it really depends. Like you could have a crazy snowflake, like insane cover.
Yeah.
And then you could have a snowflake that just has a few dots. And all that is like, again, it's polygenic. So you're breeding your best snowflake to your best snowflake to make even better snowflakes. If you breed a snowflake that has just a little bit of dots to a normal, that those babies are going to have, some of them might be good, but some of more than likely they're going to have just a few dots or just look normal.
Yeah, for sure. And then are you gonna bring in any new morphs into your stuff like that, your tree frog?
Once those prices come down, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would probably do that.
Yeah.
I do pretty well with them because I also do those wholesale to pet stores. So like throughout, because I'll have enough to supply me for almost the whole year with the frogs.
Wow.
So that's wholesale and retail. So I don't really need to, but I would like to.
Yeah. So like, it seems like you've gotten down the breeding of those. Are they pretty prolific? Like, do they lay a lot of eggs, or is just you've gotten pretty good at how's starting the breeding of those? Do you have to do the rain chamber and all that stuff?
So for years I didn't do a rain chamber. So what I did was, because I wanted something simple. So I had an old like white throat monitor cage outside. It was like 8 feet long, 6 feet wide, and then 4 feet high. And the white throat ended up passing, and what I ended up doing was so it was like wire mesh and wood. So what I ended up doing was I put soft-sided or soft like for your lanai outside for your pool, the screen. But I made sure it was like the softer material. If you use something like a Reptibreeze screen, it's going to shred their faces. So I used the soft ones for your pool, and I put it on the inside and I put it on the outside. So that way the frogs had no contact with that metal, because I wasn't going to rip out the metal, the sheet. So that way, if they did come up, like if they did go on it, it wouldn't mess up their face. And then I just shoved a bunch of elephant ear plants in there, lots of plants. And I put a bunch of tubes for them to go into and hide. And then I put a shelf full of 10-gallon tanks. And then I also put 5-gallon buckets, like Home Depot buckets, filled them with water. And I just let them ride 24/7 all year long. When it rains, they go crazy and they all jump into their little respective little buckets or tanks, and they just have lots of eggs. So it was an animal that I really didn't even have to like put effort into, which was cool.
Wow.
This year I had like a really like sucky year with them. Rain never showed up. Like it would rain in Tampa, it would rain everywhere, but in Orlando. So I was like 3 months like late year to date with the frogs. So I should already have frogs that are almost like looking like adult sizes now, and all sizes from there. And I didn't get my first spawn until probably a month ago. So I'm really behind. And I did that with a rain chamber. I made a rain chamber, put them inside. And that ended up working because I was getting desperate because I had all these pet stores messaging me. Like, hey, you're going to have frogs, you're going to have frogs, you're going to have frogs. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I didn't want to do a rain chamber. I didn't want to put work into breeding them. And I did, and it ended up saving my butt.
So did you do the rain chamber because you have them in the exterior enclosure, right? Still?
Yeah. So those animals are all outside. And then I made a rain chamber in a tank indoors. And what I did was I basically just went inside the enclosure. I picked out certain ones that I wanted to breed, like selectively breed.
Yeah.
I threw them in my building in the tank and then turned the rain chamber on. And which was cool because I actually got to select who was breeding who. Which for years I didn't do that. You guys have fun. It would rain and it would be this massive frog orgy. And who knew what the parents were, who knew what the babies were going to look like. But this time I was able to control everything. So I have 2 separate tanks right now. So one is full of snowflake white street frogs, and the other one is full of the blue-eyed honeys. And and they're actually coming out of the water now. So as we speak, they're losing their tails and they're coming up. So they should be ready by Daytona.
Okay. So it's going to be a pretty cool, to see, what you're producing with selectively picking a couple now,
Yeah.
this year.
I've been lazy. I could have been so ahead of it, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh wow, because I was so against doing the rain chamber. I was so against it because
Yeah.
I do a lot of outdoor keeping, so I let Mother Nature dictate.
Mm-hmm.
When is it time to breed? When is it time to sleep? All this stuff. So yeah, when I did it, I was like, oh, I was so against it. And then when it actually worked, I was like, all right, maybe this wasn't that bad. Because this
Yeah.
year, like for instance, like the blue-eyed honeys, they're a visual recessive.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be breeding to a normal for all you know. So all the
And then
babies are
they have
normals.
heads. Yeah.
Yeah, you have no clue. But this
Yeah.
time I was able to I made a tank of just the blue eyes together. So
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed they're already, the tadpoles already have the blue eyes. So I already know. And then the snowflake babies, they're already coming out. They got a little bit of snowflake in the side. So
Nice.
this rain chamber thing ain't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess whatever you have left still in the outdoor, if they breed, then that could possibly just be right, like to like your pet store and stuff like that.
Yeah, that actually ended up happening anyway. So like,
okay.
Yeah, it's probably like a couple weeks after I did the rain chamber and had all those tadpoles.
Mm-hmm.
Then it thunderstormed crazy. And then I had like tadpoles in the actual like buckets and my old system basically. So it's cool because I have it indoors and now I have it outdoors.
No, that's cool.
More work for me, but it would be fun. And it's also interesting to see like the progression of like who grows faster, indoors or outdoors.
Yeah. And then once they have the spawn, you just let them go through their natural cycle, let them spawn there, they hatch and everything.
Yeah, so they hatch within probably like 2 days, maybe 1 day.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a little see-through egg, and then within a few days, that egg breaks out, and it's a tadpole. And indoors, I feed them, so I give them special diets, and then outdoors, those tanks are so full of algae and just natural things in the water that all I do is every like week or so, I'll like make little cubes of it's like a rapashi diet for frogs, and I'll just chuck one into each bucket or tank, and then they just grow on their own.
That's cool.
And then, but indoors, I got to do a lot of water changes. Like if you're familiar with like keeping fish, lots of water changes on the tadpoles indoors, because it's when you have like hundreds of aquatic things in a tank.
Yeah,
your nitrates, your ammonia, all that spikes through the roof.
Yeah, there's no natural balance to it. Yeah.
No, I mean I do have a lot of like pothos in those tanks indoors, like a lot, because I want it to absorb as much as possible. But no matter what, the amount of tadpoles that you have in there, there's nothing that can keep up with it. So you still have to do your water changes. So I do water changes almost every day, probably like 20% every day.
So now doing the rain chamber, water changes, it is a good amount of substantial work. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that way. Yeah.
So what other species are you
just collected?
Yeah. What other species are you keeping outdoors?
So honestly, like 98% of my collection is outdoors.
Wow.
All my jewel Lacertas and anything in that Lacerta complex, that's outdoors 24/7. I do albino bullfrogs, that's outdoor 24/7. The white tree frogs are outdoors. My tortoises, I have redfoot tortoises and aldabras, and they're outside. I mean, obviously when it gets cold, they have like a little house that they can go into, and then I turn the lights on when I like the heat on.
Yeah.
But they never come in. The last time those animals came inside the building that I have was for I forgot what the name of the hurricane was. But we had a hurricane.
Yeah, one of the hurricanes.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago, and I had to bring them all indoors, and lugging in a 100-pound aldabra is not fun. That was not fun at all. That made me rethink my whole thing.
Yeah, that's cool. What was the deciding factor to keep outside instead of having indoor stuff?
So years and years ago, when I was a kid, when I first my first actual reptile was that my mother actually let me keep was a green iguana, shocker, and there was no like zoom med lights, there was no UVB, so like there was like, I think it was called like the Vita light. It was a terrible light, and I was using that, And I was a kid, I was a teenager, and my mom was like, I can't spend all this money on this thing. So she was like, why don't you put it outside? And I was like, you can't do that. And she's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
They're in Puerto Rico, like all over the fucking place, and they're all over Miami, like they're doing fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, she's right. So ever since then, I've always kept animals outside. I mean, I have some animals that I want to enjoy indoors, or there's
Hmm.
certain species like more of a desert species, arid species that I'll
Hmm.
keep indoors. But for the most part, the sun is free. There's no electricity. So I would, from there on, when I started actually breeding, I was focusing on animals that would do well in Florida with our climates. And I based everything on that. So that's how it's been so far. Like I said, I do have some stuff indoors. Um, like a lot of anything I hatch out is usually indoors for the first like month or so, and then they're
Hmm.
outside, depending on the species. I do have some Agernia, which is like um, like Australian skinks that are of a drier. They're inside. What else do I have inside? Baby bearded dragons, all that.
Yeah.
But like I said, the majority is outdoors.
Outdoors. So
Yep.
about how many species do you think you have right now? Breeding species.
I knew you were
20?
gonna ask me that, and I thought I should have counted, but I didn't.
We'll say like maybe 20 within like the different like lizards, frogs, tortoise.
Maybe 50, maybe
Wow.
around that, maybe around that 50,
Yeah.
just outside. Yeah,
Wow.
and then as
That's
far as as far as animals go, it's I don't know,
yeah.
who knows, a couple hundred.
When did that like that go with like the amounts? When did you say, okay, I don't want to just do one, two, or three species and it passed like the 10 mark?
Okay, so I can tell you why. First off, I'll tell you why I
Yeah.
diversified my whole collection. Um, so, for instance, this all started when I was still breeding the ball pythons.
Hmm.
So, for me, this is only my opinion. You all can have your opinion. Whenever I had the one species, I was bored
Hmm.
because my ball pythons were still growing up. I was waiting for them to grow up. I was waiting for them to breed. I was waiting for the eggs to hatch. And it was just that animal, focusing on that one animal. When I diversified and I had all these different species, everything happens mentally quickly. So it's like, okay, while this is growing up, this is breeding. Okay, while this is breeding, this is ready to breed. This species is ready to breed. This species still has a couple months. Oh, this species is hatching. So there's always something that's
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
rather than one species and I'm just focusing on it and, oh, they're not ready yet. Feed, clean, the end. I'm always busy. So most of my animals do hatch out in the summer. They're breeding in the spring, but I do have animals, you know, that do breed earlier in the winter. So no matter what time of year it is, something's going on that I have
Hmm.
my attention on, or several things at the same time. Because again, I would get bored.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think with your personal, you getting boredom, but then I'm thinking on the business side, it's so smart to do as well because of what we were talking about, how different species have that cycle of they're popular, people want them now. And if you're
Yeah,
able to offer that, the variety, you're safer on the business side as well for that,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And also, it really works for the reptile shows.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, not to put any hate on anyone who does one species, but most of the time when you have one species on a table, unless it's the customer that wants that one species, half the time they just look and they don't even look. They'll just kind of glance and they just keep walking.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
when you have a table full of a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
then even the people who don't want it, they still want to come and talk about it and look at it. They want to see everything that you have.
Hmm.
So that works a lot for me.
Yeah. And that's like with the hog nose. I only have hog nose right now to breed. But what I had told myself was like, I'm gonna get at least 2 years of successful breedings, and then I'm gonna add a different species. I added this year I have green bears racers, and stuff like that. I'm hoping to get
Actually,
a
I actually
blue.
really like that.
Yeah,
If I would jump into colubrids, I would do that. I would do the
yeah.
same.
Yeah,
I
and
like that
I'm
species.
trying to get my hands on the blue female, but it's like, trying to get your hands on the holy grail because it's insane how quick they move.
Yeah.
Um, but that gi- giant Madagascar hognose too. I want to get, some of those in here. Um, the lizard species that I want, I want to get monkey tailed skinks, you know.
Okay. I know the guy. So whenever you're ready, let me
Yeah,
know.
for sure, for sure. But like I think little by little you have to progress if you plan to make this a full-time thing and longevity.
Yeah.
For the species you have now, or maybe thinking about breeding within the next few years. Um, if somebody talks about Eddie Soto, what do you want to be known for?
Uh, oh, that's like a dramatic question. Um, Breeding of rare species that no one's ever heard of before.
Yeah.
That's I kind of like that.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll post things that no one knew that I had it until I post it, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I didn't know you had that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
I kind of hide. I don't just because I don't post it doesn't mean I don't have it."
Yeah.
And I kind of enjoy the fact that like, oh, the species is in the pet trade because I helped out breeding it. I like that. So hopefully I'm known for that. There's a couple species I can name that are actually now in captive hands, and I feel like I played a small part in that. Um, so I want to be known for that.
Okay.
That was a good
So
question. I like that question.
yeah, man, because you have such a diversity where like I think there's got to be a passion project or something that you really enjoy working, and if your name comes up, all right, you're the guy. Just like I just said, the monkey tail skinks, and
Yeah,
you know that person, right?
yeah. So
Um,
I've been in this hobby business since I was a teenager. So like I study everything. If there's a
mhm,
new morph or a new species, even if I'm not into it, like I want to know about it. I listen to probably more ball python podcasts
yeah,
than the average, and I don't keep ball pythons, but I listen to them.
yeah,
I know who the top of whoever is in that species. Like I'm always trying to figure out and diversify and also have good contacts with people. Uh, so I'm not just in my lane. I'm looking at everyone's lane,
yeah. No,
whether I'm interested in or not.
yeah, and you know what? I've said it multiple times. Like when I first started getting into like really into the reptile world, into like the tight knit community of breeding, vending, the shows, and all that stuff. Um, I started consuming the ball python stuff. Even though in ball pythons are cool, there's some cool morphs. It's not my species, right?
Yeah,
Um, but I've learned so much from listening to ball python content. People that breed them that have been doing it for so many years. There's goods and bads to learn from that. And I think, like you said, listening to as many as species and different breeders stuff, it's important to be able
yeah.
to understand because there's so many reptile species that like the water dragon, the Australian water dragons. How did that come into your hands? How did you start with those?
So I got them probably
Yeah.
maybe 2017. I don't know. Maybe it was a year or two before COVID. I know that. Before I moved into my house now. They were still an animal that was super rare. So
Mhm.
basically, what happened was there was pretty much one breeder. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what you're looking at right now is a young adult male.
Okay.
They'll get much bigger than that. And so basically, there was one breeder, and he was breeding the crap out of these things by the hundreds. And he was doing them all outdoors, and he was breeding them so much in such quantity that they were pretty much like a wholesale animal. He was selling them for like nothing. What ended up happening with that, his name was Bert Langerworth, and he ended up passing away in, I think it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken, maybe later. But when he passed away, all the species that he had in his collection, not just the water dragon, but that's the
Mhm.
best example. The collection got completely dissected and split up, and
Yeah.
then they just disappeared, like gone. So a $50 lizard that he was selling turned into 600, a baby, 700, 800, you name it. It was, no one had them. So I had an opportunity that was given to me, and I got I got a couple babies, probably like 6 babies or so,
Hmm.
and I raised them up, and I mean, they breed very easy. That's the good thing about them. The cool thing about that species is they do great in Florida. Hope Fish and Wildlife's not listening. It doesn't matter. It can't get cold enough in Florida.
Yeah.
It can't get hot enough in Florida. They do not. It's the one animal that I just throw outside. They don't come inside. Again, it's one of the animals that don't come inside unless there's a hurricane. It doesn't matter if it's 30
Yeah.
degrees.
Yeah. And
They're fine.
I just pulled up this really cool picture of,
Oh yeah,
of,
yeah.
what's the youngest to the oldest that you have here by the
So that
ages?
smallest one there is probably maybe like 3 months, 4 months old.
Hmm.
The middle one is probably anywhere from 6 to a year, and then the second largest is probably a very young male,
Hmm.
uh, probably a year or two, maybe a little older, and then the biggest one is a 3-year-old. And
Okay.
the thing is, they do mature slow. They'll
Hmm.
breed early, but they do it just because they can breed doesn't mean that they're full size yet. So that adult male that you're looking at, that big one, he's like double that size now. And he
Wow.
was breeding well before that picture was taken.
Okay. All right.
So
And
they
then,
become a big bulky animal with a big bulky head,
okay.
blood red belly.
Is there any more lingering
Not a
around or
lot.
any, and nothing, nobody's trying to prove
If
anything
there
out
is,
right now?
if there
Yeah.
is, no one's saying it, or it's not
Okay.
in Florida, or it's not in America. It's in
It's not
Australia.
America. Yeah.
This is an animal that's just everywhere in Australia. Like you go
Hmm.
to if you see zoos, they're just loose, like they're just there.
Yeah.
Which is funny how we covet them so much. But the cool thing about that species is myself and a few other breeders um, have have produced that animal enough now where it's no longer like a stupid price to have it. Like if you wanted that animal now, you're probably looking at like 300 a baby, 400 a
Hmm.
baby, which is completely reasonable when they used to be 600 a baby, 700, 800, So now whenever you want them, you can pretty much find someone breeding them.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen them, and they haven't been on my radar until you brought them up when we were talking about it. So I guess they're still, you tell me if I'm wrong, but is there still like, a handful of people breeding them? Like they're not as popular, right?
I mean, they'll never be like a mainstream pet,
Hmm.
like a ball
Hmm.
python or a hognose or a
Do
bearded
you think?
dragon.
I was going to ask you. Do you think it can replace a bearded dragon?
Never.
No,
No, no, no.
no.
They don't have that. The bearded dragon has been bred so long that
Yeah,
it's pretty much. I mean, it's not a domesticated animal. I'm not saying that,
yeah,
but it's like the closest thing you're going to get to like a reptile that's somewhat domesticated. Look at a
yeah.
bearded dragon that's like in someone's house versus one in Australia. Like they're two
Mhm.
different acting animals.
Yeah.
Um, Australian water dragon's not going to sit down and sit on your shoulder and just sit there. If it is, it's probably too cold or
Mm.
it's something's going on with it. Bearded dragons are very flighty. They can bite. Some of them are very pissy. Um, they're just, they're just a collector's type of animal.
Yeah. Okay. And then, with those, if you were to discover like, a genetic mutation stuff, that what would you like for it to be? Like, would it be like albino? It would be like a hypermelanistic stuff?
I would love for it to be albino's too easy. Everyone will say
Yeah.
albino.
Yeah.
Whatever their species is, they would say albino. Um, I would love for it to be like a melanistic hyper
Hmm.
melanism. But yeah,
Hmm.
an all black, solid black dragon, that would be cool.
Yeah, that would
With
be
the
cool.
spikes and all that, with the giant head. I think that
Hmm.
would be really cool.
Yeah. They're really impressive animals, man.
Yeah.
I'll
So
definitely.
so I used to breed a shit ton of them. I am slowly bringing those numbers down. So
Okay.
um, at one point I had 5 groups, and then 5 adult groups turned into 3, and now I have it down to 2 groups. So I have 2 adult trios, and
Okay.
I'm actually doing more of the Chinese water dragon.
Hmm.
Um, so the Chinese water dragon is another animal. Everyone knows the Chinese water dragon more than the Australian. It's
Yeah.
that $10 cheap animal, right? Well, they went CITES too, like a few years ago. So they're actually no longer coming to the country.
Hmm.
And so an animal that used to be $10, and not that I would describe them that, but that disposable pet that everyone says, they're no longer that animal. And if people don't start breeding them soon, They could be an animal that could be pretty much lost in our trade. So I have a decent group of those now that I'm focusing on. The Australian water dragon, it's here. It's not going anywhere for now. We did our part. I'm still keeping them because I like them, but I'm focusing a lot on the Chinese water dragon because the people who have them are really like people who have just the one pet and that's it. So,
Yeah.
people don't really know that they're not coming into the country in those numbers anymore. So I got a decent sized group. I already have a bunch of eggs in the incubator, and I'm trying to like make sure that animal doesn't disappear in captivity.
That's cool.
Or I mean, if it is still in captivity, I don't want the price to be ridiculous,
Yeah, for that, for it to be, let's say 2 years from now, $2,000 for one because there's two people breeding them or something like that.
Yeah. That would honestly be ridiculous. Even if I'm
Yeah.
the one breeding them, I would still say that price is ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's interesting talking about pricing because even if you are the, if let's say you're the one doing it, there's got to be a cap at some point, right? Of what the animals are worth and stuff. What do what's your mindset on pricing things like that?
So it really depends. I mean, at reptile shows, sometimes I price a little low on like everything I have just to move it because I know I'm going to have a bunch of other stuff. If it's a species I really like there's going to be a bunch of animals at Daytona that I'm pricing high because if I don't sell them, I'm keeping them. I want them.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the species and the circumstances. But yeah, I do tend to, at the shows, I tend to price a little low.
Okay. I mean, especially for like local stuff where like people are there to go buy pets. I think, that's a general practice too, because, people are looking to, what I've seen, at least for my species, for hognose, it's like at the Repticons and the smaller shows, even some of the like the Dallas show or, Reptilian Nation, where there are a good amount of people that come in, is still a pet buyer from majority of it.
Especially the Reptilian Nation show.
Yeah. And, I think like the $500 threshold is that sweet spot of, you're moving those animals pretty well for a pet keeper.
Yeah.
What is for the species that you have? I mean, you have bearded dragons, you have the white tree frogs. What is your other like big mover at shows?
Right now, the jewel Lacertas are picking up steam.
The jewel Lacertas.
Not too many people know too much about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like if you were to compare like as far as like pet quality, like that bearded dragon level, they'd be below that. But they can be interactive. They can be tamed down to sit with you and all that. But they are an animal that's not going to sit there permanently like a bearded dragon. They're going to sit there for a little bit, and then they'll probably walk around.
Yeah.
So that animal is actually that's an example of an animal that like no one has at all but me. There's probably a few other breeders. So that animal right there is like if you were to put a red Ackies and a jewel Lacerta, and if you were to put them together, you would have that animal right there.
Okay.
It's very monitor-like. It's very smart, but it's very tiny, and it's technically in the Lacerta complex. I don't really know how close it is, but it's in that branch somewhere.
Yeah. So if I'm reading, it is a Dalmatian rock lizard.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Where does it originate from?
I think it's Algeria.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this full grown size on this?
So that's an adult. I just actually hatched a baby today, and it's like if a nickel fell on it, it would probably break its back.
Wow.
Yeah, they hatch out kind of like just a little bit bigger than like the anoles that we have here in Florida. That's an animal that I will have at Daytona.
Okay. So
Daytona.
And back to like, being probably, a handful of people that has these, how were you just researching this? Did it fall into your lap, going through social media or something like that? How did this come into you?
So I honestly didn't know what it was until I was given the opportunity to work with it. So I do have some animals here on loan, and so basically I have someone that will say, hey, this is a cool species. Let's make more of them and let's see what we can do with them. So that animal is an example of that. So that animal, I have on breeding loan from someone else
Mm-hmm.
that purchased them, and basically my job is to
To
breed
breed
them
them.
and make them work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I saw the list and I saw that animal, I was like, I don't know about that. I don't see the appeal on that.
Yeah.
And then keeping it before I even bred it, just keeping it, I was like, oh, these things are pretty fucking cool. Like they come up to the glass, they want to like see what I'm doing. Again, they're very monitor like, and they're small. And then once I started getting eggs and they started hatching, and the rest is history on that. I think
For sure.
they're like a great small animal for a little terrarium if you wanted to have that like on your desk or something.
Mm-hmm. That's cool, and it's a very impressive color too on them.
Yeah.
How do they keep their color pretty well?
Yeah, so that's an adult. So it's got a slate blue tail,
Mm-hmm.
kind of purplish pastel body.
Mm-hmm.
When they hatch out, that tail is like bright blue. Um, and then the body is like almost like a purple, and the head is blue. And
That's cool.
it's a very vibrant animal.
Yeah,
But again,
and
it
I
hatches
see
so
that
tiny.
you have a lot of very vibrant animals. Like, one of the things that when I was going through your social media and stuff was like, like this, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is this behavior what is going on with this
So
behavior here?
what that animal is telling you right now is like, hey, I'm tough. Leave
Mm-hmm.
me alone. I might fuck you up. I might not. Do you want to
Yeah.
take that chance? That's the tongue display. That's what it's doing. It's a really impressive display. I really
Yeah.
love that species. It's a green keeled lizard, or a green keeled belly lizard, and yeah, they defend. So it's what you don't see in that video is its female, its partner is actually like hiding under a cork piece with
Okay.
eggs, and he was defending her and letting me know to leave him alone.
Oh, that's interesting. And that's another thing too. I've seen in the in certain lizard species where they're very protected of either their eggs or their hatchlings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and you were talking about keeping the Australian dragons in trios. How are they with their offspring after they hatch?
Oh, those you got to collect. If you don't collect them and they hatch out, they're going to eat them. There's
Mm,
no, they do not care. Once they're in the ground, they're not defending them.
okay.
Um, yeah, it's not like for instance, like a tokay
Yeah.
gecko. They're not looking for blood if you mess with their eggs.
Hmm.
So you just
Oh,
take it. This animal here actually will kind of defend the eggs
hmm.
for a little, like maybe for like a couple days or so, and then they kind of just forget about it. So when the
Okay.
female's done laying, she'll kind of stay around them, and then if you try to like grab them, she'll come at you.
Yeah. Are the females and males same color or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, they're identical. So there's another one up there that I see with the tongue sticking out.
Yeah, this
That's
one.
that's another male there. Um,
That's one.
and that's
And then
actually that's a tame animal too.
yeah, it's definitely just sitting on your hand, chilling out.
Yeah, he won't run away.
That's cool. And same thing, keeping outside and stuff.
Yeah, that animal's outside. You got to keep that animal. You got to make sure that cage is escape proof because they're another animal where they're very intelligent. They're
Hmm.
thinking. They're not just a lizard that sits there. So if you have a weakness in your cage, if you have like a slight like slit in the cage, it's going to exploit that and go and be gone, and you'll never see it again.
Damn.
Whereas like if you had like a day gecko or an anole,
Hmm.
they don't really understand the hole and they're not going to try to go through it. I mean, if it's a big enough hole, they'll go through it. But
Yeah.
those animals will actually go out of their way to like make the hole bigger and stretch and pull themselves and go through it. Like they're
Wow.
looking at that hole and saying, okay, I can escape through there.
Yeah.
Whereas another lizard is just by chance, it just stumbles upon it and then escapes.
Yeah. And then, I'm guessing keeping all these animal stuff that are you building your own enclosures and stuff like that?
I am now for certain species. I am. So all my
Hmm.
Lacertas, they're like in wooden enclosures
Hmm.
with like tops, like screen tops. And then a lot of like my smaller species are actually in reptibreezes, in like rows of reptibreezes
Okay.
that are outside with plants. They're heavily planted, and they make it easy for me to like take eggs and all that, but still have the animal um, in the perfect care that they need. But every now and then, those cages, the reptibreeze cages, the pre-made cages,
Hmm.
uh, they do need to be repaired. You need to check them. You need to every week or so. I'm making sure there's no damages to those cages because if something gets loose, I'm screwed.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because that's one of the, like, I think the biggest thing about thing about keeping outside is having an enclosure that's gonna withstand the Florida sun.
Yeah,
Is gonna be able to keep the animal in and stuff, and it's got to be ongoing work of maintaining and keeping them.
yeah, and predator proof.
And predator proof. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
when I first moved into this house, um, I didn't, obviously I had no clue what was around us.
Mm-hmm.
So like the very first night, I had a cage outside, and a raccoon came, and the way the cage was is it was meant for the animal couldn't escape out of it, but the slits were, they were decent size. The animals were big enough where they couldn't go through it, but the raccoon's hands were able to go in it and like rip out the animals. So
Oh,
it was just like
shoot.
grabbing these animals and just ripping them through these little holes. And it was like that was my first night living in this house.
Oh
I woke
man.
up and it was like all these animals just decapitated on the floor. So
Damn.
yeah, that sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine waking up to that in the morning and like, because at the end of the day, it's like you're responsible for it, and it's
Yeah,
your animals that you've been keeping and stuff like that, to just have a goddamn raccoon come in and eat
yeah,
them,
yeah. I really felt like I let down that animal, or that
Yeah.
species.
Yeah.
It actually
And
did that actually ended up. So I had a whole colony in that one cage,
mhm,
and usually like I split them up so that way, like if something happened, if let's say one thing gets sick, like it doesn't affect
mhm,
the ones over here, like because you never know.
mhm.
Um, but since I just moved, I had them all in one enclosure, so it like wiped everything out. I only had like an
Oh
existing pair
wow.
after that. Yeah,
Wow.
it was a species that was breeding since like 2017 consistently, and then 2000 that happened,
Yeah.
and yeah, it like devastated that collection for me.
Yeah.
So
And that was one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about, was like one of the, like, the goods and bads about keeping outside. What's some of the worst experience you've had with keeping animals outside and stuff, and you know how do you fighting any, like, any diseases that might come from just animals from the outside, or just maintaining the general health.
so as far as health wise, you just want to make sure that they can escape the heat.
Hmm.
Florida is very intense. I mean, no matter how hot the animal likes it, if you don't give them an option to hide, you're going to cook them.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. You're going to cook your animal, but you also got to make sure they have access to that sun too. Um, as far as like sickness, I've never had animals get too sick. Like if
Hmm.
you have like a desert animal that you're keeping outside in Florida, you might run into like respiratory because it's not meant to be in our high humidity with rainfall all the time. Example would be like a leopard tortoise. I keep leopard tortoises. They're a desert, not a desert, but they're more of an arid species. Um, if it rains constantly, like all day, all night, like we do have here sometimes, that species I'll have to bring indoors until it dries up a little bit. If
Hmm.
not, the eyes will shut down and they just sit there, or they'll get shell rot. So you just got to watch your animals and know what's going on. Um, my number one thing here is everything's predator proof now, especially after that happened.
Yeah.
Uh, the biggest pain in the ass I've ever had was the one hurricane that we had, where it flooded. It was like we had a flash flood. I'm forgetting the name of that hurricane. Damn.
Was it Sand? Not, was it Sandy?
No, no, no.
No,
It was damn
2 years ago. I don't
2 years
know.
ago.
With South, with South
There's too
Florida.
many. Yeah,
Yeah, and then in South Florida, we've been very lucky, knock on wood. Where we haven't had anything like that was worthwhile in the last, I
yeah,
think, 5 years or something like that.
yeah. So the hurricane really wasn't the problem. It was the
It was the
flash
wind,
flooding.
all the wind, the
So
flooding.
yeah, yeah. So like the water just kept raising and raising and raising,
Yeah.
and all my things outside, even if they were like 4 feet high, the water outside got there. Um, so behind my house there was a pond, like a little river, and for whatever reason, the city decided to fucking bury it
Yeah.
and make it flat. So water had nowhere to go. And prior to that hurricane, we already had like weeks and weeks and weeks of just constant rain.
Hmm.
So when this flash flood came, the ground was so saturated with water that it had nowhere to go but up. Um, so that really sucked. So I had cages underground, but obviously no matter what the hurricane is, I evacuate all my animals into my building. So I didn't lose any animals at all, but cages were, I'm glad I did it, because some people don't do that and they just see what happens afterwards. I had cages completely submerged underwater. The Aldabras, I had to bring them in, which that's not fun.
Yeah, I can
Bringing redfoots
imagine.
inside is easy. Picking
Yeah.
the redfoots up and putting them in a bin, easy. Picking up 100-pound tortoise and it's not even full grown yet, that was not fun. Like my back
Yeah.
was fucked up after
You,
that.
you might have to invest like in like those like manual cranes that used to lift engines from the
Yeah.
cars, so you can pick it up, haul it, move it around and stuff like that.
So now what I did, because of what happened to me,
Yeah.
I made a door. So now I can open the door and I can grab a banana and I can lure the Aldabra. You gotta know what their soft spot is, like fruit. So
Yeah.
because they don't get it a lot, they're not supposed to get it too much. So if they see a banana, they're like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
we don't get that a
Oh,
lot.
so
So
those cages, they were closed on the side, so there was no way for them to just walk out. So you had to
no,
pick them out.
I
Oh,
had to pick them up.
yeah,
I've never had the place that we live, it's not a flood zone.
yeah.
Whatever happened was a freak occurrence that
Hmm.
never happened in this area ever. Yeah, that was crazy. You know what's gonna happen after the podcast? I'm gonna remember the name of the fucking hurricane. Um, it messed up all of like Cape Coral,
Hmm.
Port Charlotte. It messed up like crazy floods.
I
If
okay, I
anyone is,
remember that. Yeah, I forget
yeah,
the same name of it, but I remember that. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and then because that's with keeping outside with the Florida weather and stuff like that. Um, with evacuation, let's say we get a Category 5 hurricane that's going to hit us. What is your working through of you've already been through the flooding. What's your plans on how to manage all those animals outside?
yeah. So for now on, no matter what the category is for the
Hmm.
hurricane, if it's coming my way, every animal is going inside the building. So the building I have, it's actually a really large building. Basically it's a detached garage, and it's all cement. It's a giant cement
Hmm.
building. It's made in like the '60s or so, and it can take a beating, that building. Uh, so every animal is going to go in that building in bins, separated obviously by species and all that. So it's going to be a pain in the ass, and it is a pain in the ass because
Hurricane
every year there's
Irma.
more animals. Irma, yeah, that's what it is.
There
Okay,
you
yeah, it was Irma. Yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Irma was not fun.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, talking about that, because that was one of those hurricanes that was gonna come the East Coast and then turned in.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
remember because we were maybe like a year or two in this new house,
mhm.
and I remember thinking to myself, once I saw all the water rising, I was just like, man, we're fucked. Like I wasn't even thinking about the animals at that point. I was just thinking about like my family and the house, and
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, every time I just looked outside, the water was slowly getting closer and closer to my house. It actually seeped into my house.
Hmm.
We probably had like ankle deep in my kitchen.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that sucked, but it ended up working. Like literally the next day, all that water just fucking disappeared. It was crazy. It was like 4 feet of water in like the highest part, and then the
Hmm.
next day it was gone.
Wow, that's insane. So back, and I threw you off because I wanted to get the name out there, but so going into your animals, going into your detached building and stuff, um, and with the amount of species you have, good amount of space. Do you have to like play Tetris to try to fit everything in there?
No, no. I mean,
No.
it's big enough where I can fit everything in there. I mean, I
Okay.
just gotta. Right, obviously I have the building designed for me to just enjoy it with the
Hmm.
animals that are inside there. So I would just have to like move like a hallway. I just have to push certain cages a certain way
Hmm.
just to move these animals in. Um, so it's not a big deal. But if you're in Florida and you have your class 3, you're technically required to have that plan anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, so someone with a bunch of species like me, it's a little bit more challenging
Mm-hmm.
because you don't really plan on it. Like, I mean, not that you don't plan on it, but
You
it's all
don't
fun and
expect it.
games.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
really.
it's all fun and games, and it can be written down and everything,
Yeah,
but
but you
until
have
it
to put it
actually
into
happens,
play.
you got to do it, and then
Yeah.
you're like, man, why do I have all these fucking animals?
Yeah. Yeah. And with that amount of animals, and do you have animals that are like feeding every day? What's the feeding routine for you with that? Because it's got to be a lot.
So tortoises eat every day.
Yeah.
They're especially with the Aldabras,
Hmm.
they're just constantly hungry and they're never full. Um, so they're a pain. But for the most part, spring, summer, fall, everything's eating.
Hmm.
Um, the animals that live outdoors like all year round, that brumate, it's awesome because I go through that 2 month period, 2 to 3 month period where I'm not feeding them,
Hmm.
which is awesome. So
Hmm.
like the white tree frogs, the bullfrogs, the water dragons, all the Lacertas, they're just outside sleeping, and I'm not feeding them.
Hmm.
If it's because you know how Florida is, it could be 30 degrees at night, but then the next day is like 80 degrees.
Yeah.
If it's like that and they're out, and I know it's going to be kind of a hot couple of days, I'll throw in some food here and there. But for the most part, I am not feeding them like I am now. Like right now, I'm pretty much feeding daily or every other day, especially the baby.
Yeah.
Babies eat every day no matter what.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, uh, winter is sometimes a blessing here because it's like, okay, I don't got to worry about this species or these couple species. I'll see them in spring. But
Hmm.
other than that, yeah, I am feeding pretty much,
Every day.
watering and feeding every day.
Yeah. And then are your species a mixture of insect eaters and like fruits and
Yeah,
veggies and stuff like that?
yeah. So I keep a lot of different species of day gecko outside.
Hmm.
So they're eating, obviously crickets. They're also eating like the Pangea diets. Um, a lot of the anoles, same thing, crickets, Pangea, or actual like fruits, cherries, bananas.
Yeah.
Um, the tortoises, I do supplement with like the Missouri tortoise chow, but I'm also giving them um, leafy greens and fruit trees. Like we have fruit trees all over the place here.
Hmm.
So I'll grow a lot of that stuff and throw that in there. Uh, the There's certain species of Lacerta that I have that are almost like blue tongues where they're eating some insects, but they're also eating like a veggie diet with a lot of fruits in there too. So
Hmm.
those animals are easy for me. I like those species because it's like, oh, I'm running low on feeders, so I can feed fruits or something else.
Yeah.
The animals that are just strict insectivores,
Yeah.
sometimes that sucks because sometimes you
Yeah.
get your crickets and they're dead or whatever,
Yeah.
and so then you become
Yeah.
that guy who breeds roaches and mealworms like me.
It was that that was my next question. Was like, are you a mixture of breeding your own insects and buying, or you're
Yeah,
you know you yeah.
yeah. You have to. Um, so, like for instance, if there's like ever a short, like during COVID, there was the
Hmm.
shortage of crickets because everyone was buying stuff. Um, Luckily for me, I had a discoid colony and I had a mealworm colony to help me in between that.
Hmm.
If it wasn't for that, I would have been screwed because I did things through Gans crickets, and there was a period of time where like they were out of everything, or there
Hmm.
was delays or shortages. Um, so when you have those colonies as a backup, it works. So I tend not to dwell too much onto them. I try not to. I use them when I need to use them.
Yeah.
Um, so like again, if I have that in between time of not having a delivery, I am using my stuff, but I don't want to use too much of it because then it can quickly deplete.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do you still have like discord colonies and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
nowhere near it because every now and then I'll go through a period where I kind of like feed half of it.
Hmm.
Whether whatever the situation is, I'll just feed half of whatever colony I have, so I can kind of strengthen it with new bugs.
Hmm.
So right now I have like so I have the discoids, which honestly they're slower growers. Um, and then I have like this species. I don't even know the name of the species, but I have this like wood roach that I'm breeding,
Hmm.
which grow like massive quantities. Like these things are awesome, but they're like this big and they climb glass and everything.
Oh wow.
So they're a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But they're doing well for me. And the mealworms and all that, it's pretty easy. But again, you don't want to use too much of it.
Hmm.
Um, but I also don't want it to make it where I'm just focusing on feeding and taking care of bugs, just like ball python, snake people, where they end
Yeah.
up breeding their own rodents, and then they end up realizing they're doing more of that than they are taking care of the actual snakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, So
Yeah.
I try not to do too much of that.
Any challenges with like breeding the insects with the roaches and stuff like that? Especially with like the moisture here in Florida.
No, I haven't had any issues at all. The only issues I'll run into is every couple of years for whatever reason, and from what I hear, it's common. The
Hmm.
discoids kind of go through this period where they just stop producing in the quantities that they usually do,
Mm.
and you pretty much have to like bring in new blood.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that I've had issues with. The mealworms and that other wood roach that I'm telling you about, they don't care. Easy. As long as you're feeding them and cleaning them and all that, they
Hmm.
just explode.
Hmm. And then your insects, you're feeding like what's it called, like a grain diet or in a mixture of veggies and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a mixture of like wet veggies for hydration.
Hmm.
I will do some like the Repashy diet. Um,
Yeah.
so the Repashy, I forget what it's called.
The
It's called Repashy
bug
Morning
burger.
Wood.
Oh,
I
morning.
do the
Okay.
bug. I do the bug burger too, but I do
Yeah.
like a mixture of different things.
Hmm.
So the Morning Wood is it's a Repashy diet for uh, like if anyone is in the fish world, the Placo,
Okay.
the sucker fish.
Okay.
So it's something for that species, but bugs go crazy for it. So I'll do a mixture of that. Basically, I keep their diet just as diverse as for me keeping my lizards.
Yeah. Yeah. And then especially with like the unique animals, species of lizards you have, was there any one species that was like hard to establish or like just trying to figure out exactly what they like to eat, and all that stuff?
Um, right now, I'm actually going through it with the Chinese water dragon.
Okay.
Um, it's just not. They're just so different from the Australian water dragon that
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Australian dragon likes, these guys do not like. They want
Mm-hmm.
more shade. They're way more flighty. They will never eat in front of me. Like even if I put the best food in the world, the biggest hornworm, they won't eat it until I turn around. And it's been taking me a while to get them like adjusted here, so it's slowly happening. So that's probably
That's
like the
interesting.
one. Yeah, that's like the one that I'm having trouble with.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. And then so like feeding them, have with like especially when you produce, do you have any like do you have to do any special type of feeding with any of the species that you have with the babies and stuff?
So anything that's gravid, I feed them heavier.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure they're getting their calcium supplements. I do Repashy. I think it's Repashy Calcium Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's calcium and all the vitamins. It's not just calcium. Obviously, I do the D3 as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I just bulk them up. I feed them just a little bit more because all that calcium that they're taking out of their body for the eggs takes a lot out of them. Some of these lizards, they're like colubrids. Well, they'll lay, double, triple
Mm-hmm.
clutches. Some of the Lacertas I breed, I've had up to 4 clutches. Same thing with the water dragons, up to 4 clutches. And sometimes at the end of that season, they look like shit. Um,
Yeah.
and it's to the point where like even if I'm not wanting them to keep producing eggs, they're just going to do it anyway.
Yeah. What's it called? What about like the actual hatchlings and stuff? Is there any like species like with hognose? There's sometimes a handful when I have a handful of I gotta scent them with like sardine, salmon, and stuff like that. Do you have anything that going on with any of the lizards?
No, not at all. And
That's good.
I know with the hognose,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
no, everything eats.
He's
There's nothing
straight.
I have to adjust with them. No.
That's cool. That's cool. That's good. Yeah, because I mean, I think especially in the snake species, there's always with colubrids, there's always some weird, with like the Barons racer. I've heard people have to feed them live fish to start them off and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear that with the lizards is a little easier to
Yeah,
start off.
a lot of that snake stuff, you're turning a lizard eater or a frog eater, and you're trying to turn it into
To
a
a
mouse
nice,
eater.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
for sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's certain species of lizards that are like that.
Yeah.
I haven't had them, so I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. Have you thought about getting bigger lizard species than what you have now?
No, I mean, I did. I already did. I already went through that phase of having big monitors and
Okay.
big snakes. I had before the laws. I had the Burmese pythons and all that.
Mhm.
Um, they're cool, but when caging is ridiculous. Feeding is ridiculous, and honestly, like where I'm at, like does a giant water monitor make a good pet for everybody? Not really.
No.
And they do lay, produce all these clutches of whatever species it is. I'm not singling out that species, but who's going to buy them? And then you're stuck with all this bigger animals that if they're not being sold, then I got to provide caging for those animals.
Yeah. And then, the after fact of thinking about it, like maybe somebody might have the want to do it, or are they really capable of doing once that animal gets, to a 3-4 foot long, 6 foot long animal, like you said, like a giant water monitor or something like that. And then you 2 years from now, and it's, either, up on Craigslist or just abandoned somewhere, all that stuff.
I mean, before the ban, like I think it was 2010 when they put the ban on like the Burmese pythons and the retics. I mean, you would go on Craigslist any given time, and it was nothing but Burmese pythons for sale.
Yeah.
And again, they're not for everybody because people just got them because they wanted to be cool. And a lot of times they were in poor condition when you saw them on Craigslist.
Yeah. Look, man, and that's one thing. Like, that's what I like my hognose, because they are a smaller species, and be able to keep something smaller. Like I couldn't, like you said, Burmese. Retics with, retics are really cool looking and stuff. But I couldn't imagine having to feed that animal, constantly and having a breeding stock of it. I give it to the people that are doing it, because it is definitely a big commitment to it.
No, I agree. The people who are doing it the right way and can do it, I mean, that's awesome. But for me,
no, I agree.
For the most part, I'm breeding like pet animals. So I want to make sure whoever has it can take care of them,
For sure. Yeah.
I already have 2 Aldabras that when they take, shits, it's like this, it's big. It's a big turd that I got to pick up. So, and they're nowhere near being full grown. So, yeah.
With the Aldabras, is there a reason you went Aldabra instead of like the Galops?
Yeah. So for years, I always wanted a Galop. That was my dream animal, was the Galop. Until I went to a farm that had Galops, and they were kind of like assholes.
Really?
They were huffing and puffing, and then they were like combating each other. Like there was males that were kind of fighting with each other, and then the Aldabras were the ones that were coming up to me, and they wanted their necks cleaned and scratched, and they don't fight. So that's the main reason I went with the Aldabras. And it's funny because I never planned on actually getting them. It was like my wife got it for me for Christmas, my first one.
That's cool.
For 15 years straight, I was always bugging her. Like she was always say, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I would always say, "Oh, I want an Aldabra or a Galop." And it was a joke. It was not serious. And then after year 15, she's like, "Fuck it. I'm tired of you asking me.
Yeah.
Get your Aldabra." So that's cool. How that ended up happening. And then the second Aldabra, which is the bigger one, she's like, that one, he's like 15 years old. A friend of mine just happened to be in a situation where someone gave him some, and he like messaged me. He's like, "Hey, do you want one?" And I was like, first off, I'm like, he's going to send me a picture of a sulcata. Because so many people will show me, like they'll look at a redfoot, for instance, and they'll say, "Oh, I have that." And then they'll take a picture and it's like a gopher tortoise. Like people just, they don't have a concept of what a species actually looks like. So I'm expecting my friend, who is not in our business at all, like he's not in our hobby. And he's like, "No, he's like, I'm pretty sure it's an Aldabra." So I'm like, "Okay, send me pictures." Sends me pictures, and sure as shit, it's a real Aldabra, massive animal. It was already, like I said, it was already probably like 15 years old. And I'm not going to say no to a free Aldabra.
15-year-old, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's the two Aldabras I have in the yard. That's how I got them. Though if I had to get rid of every species and just keep one, that would be the species I would keep. Those are like my actual. I have no plans on breeding them.
Okay.
They're just I just enjoy them.
Yeah.
They're also both boys, so they can't breed.
Yeah, and I've heard that they're like almost having like a pet dog. Like they come up to you. They're very social and stuff.
Yeah. So as babies, they're a little bit like you got to earn their trust. They don't. So my original one that I raised as a hatchling, he was like, if I looked at him the wrong way, he would huff up and he would run away. He just didn't want to be around me. He wouldn't eat in front of me. But after like year 5, he started to stay with me. He used to live with a bunch of redfoots, and the redfoots would come to me and eat. So he would just follow them. And doing that, he just kind of learned to like me. So, but now he he comes up to me, sticks his neck all the way out. I scratch it. He'll sit there for like 20 minutes and just let me scratch his neck. And yeah, both of them now come up to me and do this. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I really enjoy that aspect.
You know, and talking about the earning their trust, how was it with that older male that you got?
So from what I understand, that older one lived on acres of land and wasn't really like attended to very well. So it really did not enjoy people like at all. I couldn't scratch its neck. If I touched its neck, it would huff up and put its neck in, and it just didn't want to be around me. But over time, it just followed suit, and now it's one of the tortoises that if it sees me even from a distance, even if it hears me, it's coming up to the front. It's trying to get out and get my attention because it just assumes I'm going to feed them. So, no, I do enjoy them. I would eventually like to get a galop, but I still think the Aldabras would probably be the better pet if you can house them.
Yeah. If somebody is looking to breed the Aldabras, what is their breeding age? Because it's pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, I've heard as the earliest I've ever heard an Aldabra breeding was like 12 years old. But generally you're going to want to wait till like they're in their 20s, late 20s.
That's wow. That's a commitment, man. Yeah.
Like I said, I have no intention of breeding them at all. And again, they're both boys. But they're mounting objects, so I know they're boys and they're grunting and they're doing all that. I guess they're being like a little middle schooler, discovering themselves. So yeah, but yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not planning on it because that would be another 20 something years, 5 years for the bigger one. But then I would have to find a female that's just a ridiculous. Yeah. I'm not going to spend $50,000 on an animal.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll see some of those, older, Aldabras and stuff like that, especially Aldabras, because Galops are a little harder to come by, especially like bigger size. But I'll see sometimes Aldabra come up on the pricing. It's like, man, the cost on them, the pricing, it's really high up there.
The prices go up based on their age too. So like you can spend like for an Aldabras are a little bit cheaper. So like $2,000 a baby, give or take. So $2,000 for a little 6-month baby. But once that baby starts to grow, it turns into, I mean, if you were to put a price tag on my Aldabras, I mean, maybe $10,000 right now per animal, maybe more. I honestly don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of my ass. But based on the sizes that I see online, I would probably say that. And then full-blown breeding adults would be ridiculous prices. If you go on Morph Market and you look at the Aldabra section, you'll see full-blown adults for like almost like a down payment on a big-ass house.
Yeah, no, for sure. And talking about, like, you brought up Morph Market, you do a lot of the shows. Are you on Morph Market? And how does your sales go?
So I am on Morph Market. I don't use Morph Market that much because most of my sales are at the shows. Again, I'm at a show. I literally do almost every Repticon in Florida all year round.
So sometimes it's twice a month. Yeah.
Oh yeah. More than that. No. There's been times where I've done like 6 weeks straight of Repticons.
Wow.
I go as far as Miami to the Panhandle. In fact, me and you did the was it Fort Walton together?
The Fort Walton,
yeah. Fort Walton? Yeah, it was Fort Walton.
Yeah. That was a good show too. I like that.
That was a good show. A good show. The Panhandles are a little bit like the crowd is better there because they don't have Repticons
as
often.
much. Yeah.
So that's why that show is awesome. But yeah, I'm at a show all the time, so my inventory is pretty much for those shows. But every now and then, when I do breed that rare stuff, that stuff that no one at a Repticon is gonna know what it is, and there is no Daytona, that's where Morph Market comes in, because then I'll put up the rare animal that somebody will see and know what it is, and then they'll buy it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far, every time I put a rare animal up, it's
Mhm.
gone.
That's cool.
In fact, there was one. I had a species of gecko that I put on Morph Market, and not even like 20 minutes later, it was sold. It,
Damn.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that was my first time ever posting on Morph Market too.
You know, it's crazy because like the timing sometimes on Morph Market, it's everything, right? Like, was that person just, by chance put that animal species, in the search button and it popped up, right?
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no clue. And based on like the searching, and then I looked, like that species was like never on Morph Market to begin with. Like there was
Hmm.
no other example than the one that I posted.
Hmm.
So I don't know how this person found it that fast.
Yeah.
I
That's
guess he
pretty
was
wild.
just scrolling through like the gecko section, the other
The
gecko
other,
section,
yeah.
because that's where you're gonna find all your cool stuff, the
Yeah.
other category. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was on that and then saw those and snatched them up right away.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely go. That's pretty interesting to see because, like, I go a lot into the Western hog nose just to see what's being posted, pricing, and stuff like that. But then once in a while, I'll go into the rabbit hole of the other species, the category other. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, especially the tortoise stuff. Because I really like the Aldabras. I really like the galops, and stuff like that. Um, one of my, like top animals I eventually I want to galop one day. Um, so I think they're pretty cool, but I think like searching those other, non-categorized animals, you'll find some
Oh
really
yeah,
cool stuff
you'll
out
find a
there.
bunch of hidden gems.
Yeah, yeah, man. Is there, no, talking about hidden gems, is there any species that, are you working to bring in to your collection and stuff like that currently?
So I've been really heavily focused in they're called so they're a lizard from the Canary Islands,
Mm-hmm.
Galotia. They're in that Lacerta family as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been really into that species, and I've been able to acquire some of the species in quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, those islands, there's several species, so I'll never have all of them. But if I could, I would definitely have probably every species of Galotia that's available in my collection. But that's
Yeah,
probably never going to happen.
that's cool.
The cool thing about that, not the cool thing, but that island, um, a lot of those animals are actually declining because they have one of their invasive species is the California king snake, which is
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
Yes. So the California king snake that we have at reptile shows all over the place.
Yeah, it's invasive over there.
Someone let them go as a pet, and they basically took over. And one of their primary diets on the island are these lizards. So they're declining because of the California king snake.
Mm-hmm. Do you have one of those on your Instagram?
Yeah, it's the black lizard. It's probably like the last thing I posted.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's the last thing I posted.
Yeah, let me bring this up.
It's like blue and yeah,
Yeah.
that thing. Yeah, that's
That's
a
pretty cool. It has almost like a what's it called? Damn. Um they're a lizard that they're banned here now.
oh, the tegu. Yeah, yeah,
They have like almost like a tegu kind of
yeah,
body look, yeah, to
yeah.
it.
No,
Yeah.
that's so that's the cool colored species. I just got babies of those. They're really cool because they're really not an insect eater. They'll eat it,
Hmm.
but they really want like fruits and plant matter. So you basically treat them like a blue tongue skink.
Okay.
So they'll eat the same diet as a blue tongue. So these guys go crazy for like hibiscus flowers, the
Hmm.
leaves. In fact, on the islands, a lot of them are the main pollinators of their islands.
Yeah.
So they're very weird. And then I have another species. I don't think I have it on Instagram at all,
Hmm.
but it's probably the largest species of Lacerta, and it's from the Canary Islands as well. And it's literally like a small tegu. It's triple the size of the animal that you're seeing right now.
Wow.
It has these giant jowls.
Hmm.
It's just brown. It's like a coffee brown lizard, but it's gigantic. And I just acquired. I have 3 adult males, and I just got 2 females. So I need another female. But
Yeah. And are these animals, are you importing directly from Canary Islands, or are you getting from,
No,
you know,
I don't. I honestly don't even know if that's legal. I don't know the
okay.
legalities of that. I'm pretty sure it's not legal. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's been shut down. But
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff I had came from Europe.
Okay.
Um, so that's how I got it. And then the other species, the really large species of Galotia, um, there were certain people in America
Mhm.
that just had like one here, one there. Like one guy had like a bunch of males doing nothing,
Mhm.
and then another person had like a couple females. So I basically just contacted these people and was able to get some of these animals. And the cool thing about that species, or that branch of species, is based on like documentaries that I've watched. They're a very long lived animal. There was an example of like a 30-something-year-old animal still producing that they had records of.
Wow.
So so I'm not really too worried if anyone says the animals are old. Like I'm not.
Mhm.
I mean, I haven't bred them yet. I mean, I bred this one, but the
Yeah.
really big one, we'll find out next year.
Okay. And
But I
then,
think that could be a good pet.
yeah, and the one that we were just looking at, same male, female, same colors, same sizes and stuff
So
like that?
yeah, so that's the male.
Okay.
The female is much smaller, like half that size,
Okay.
and it doesn't have that impressive mouth, the jowls. It doesn't have
Mhm.
that. So it just has more of like a proportion, small head.
Mhm.
Um, but still, it has those colors though. But it's nowhere
That's
near
cool.
as impressive as the male.
Yeah. And they lay eggs too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. They
That's
lay
cool.
eggs, and they'll lay for that species that we just looked at. The female laid 3 clutches so far,
Wow.
and I think she's done. I'm pretty sure she's done, but there
Yeah.
could be a fourth. I don't know. There's no the cool thing. I mean, not the cool thing, but there's really not much information. Like if you go searching, you're not gonna find,
Mhm.
you know, husbandry on how to keep this animal. You're just not gonna find
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you are gonna find it, it's in a different language. Um, so some of the stuff I'm doing is trial and error.
Mhm.
And in fact, that those species are an animal that people told me that I shouldn't do outside, or they would do poorly, and it's been the opposite. I mean, they brumated, and
Mhm.
obviously I have babies now, so I think they're doing pretty good.
That's cool. No, and I think that's, you have so much of these very unique animal species and stuff like that, that these trial by fires, you learn a lot from that,
Yeah, yeah,
then if you just have the recipe to success, like it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step, right?
it's boring.
um and
Yeah,
it gets, yeah, it gets, to that point. It's like, all right, what's next now?
yeah,
um how,
yeah.
and with you having a wife, she's bought you, the Aldabra and stuff like that. How has that been with, like, okay, now I'm getting this species and stuff like that, with the family aspect of it?
I mean, she's used to it. Like
Hmm.
when we were together, I already had a lot of these lizards and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, like we have a house, we have a family, and all that. So
Hmm.
you got to be. I can't just be buying all these expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the most I did get screwed over like years ago. I invested in like iguana morphs.
Hmm.
Um, this was before the ban. This was before everything. And then as these animals were growing and reaching maturity, that's when the ban was taking place. And
Damn.
so I did lose. I spent probably over like, I don't know, maybe 10 grand or so.
Yeah.
And so I had like the albinos, the crimson albinos. Me and my buddy, I had a project kind of like on loan where it was like a one of a kind
Hmm.
um, iguana that was found. It was basically like an albino and a translucent together. Um, I'm sure it's made now, like in other countries, but
Yeah.
at the time we were like pretty sure we were the only ones with it. And yeah, as soon as these animals were mature and ready to breed, Florida was talking about doing the ban on the tegus and the iguanas. And for whatever reason, usually when these bans happen, like USARC, like, they stop it. But as soon as I heard this was happening, I just knew. I just knew before
Yeah.
anything. I just knew it was not going to go well. And yeah, I ended up selling a lot of those animals. And then literally like a month later, that's when they, you know,
Hmm.
the rule was passed.
Hmm.
So that sucked. But yeah, no, I've
Yeah.
always been doing this stuff. I mean, she probably thought I was crazy when I told her I wanted to do it like as
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 a
a
full
main
time.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely it is. You know, like you say, we're having family and stuff like that. It's definitely a harder decision to make than just saying, you know, if you're by yourself, all right, I'll try it out and hopefully it works out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um, you know, and with talking about like you know FWC, the bands and stuff like that, and if you've lived through them and gone through them,
yeah,
you know, luckily I within the time that I've been into like the breeding stuff, I haven't you know had to deal with an actual band. Um, what is your like you know thoughts and plans of like if you have a species that it is going into a ban? What do you know? Have you thought about that? I'm pretty. It's got to be in our. I mean, I feel like it's in every Florida keeper's mind. You know, especially
yeah,
breeders' mind. Like, you know, what if my species gets banned tomorrow? You know.
yeah. I mean, the iguana one sucked, but
Yeah.
it probably would have sucked more if I was heavily breeding them and I had
Hmm.
babies and I had, you know, this year babies and last year's babies. That would have sucked for me because then it's like, okay, how do I get rid of all this stuff?
Hmm.
Luckily, I did all that beforehand, but man, I don't even know how you would prepare for that because you would have to plan for them to get out of the state,
Hmm.
and then when you talk about like a price aspect, those prices go down because you're
They're
saturating
not
the
wanted
market.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you're throwing, I mean just tegus alone, not even the iguana, just tegus alone. How many hundreds of tegus, regardless of the craziest morph or whatever they were, those prices sank when we were throwing hundreds out of Florida.
Hmm.
Um, I can only imagine what that's like, but no, I don't even know. Like if that were to happen, it would not go well here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, but again, the cool thing is like I do have other species to bounce off. So like let's say they banned one species, okay, I still
Hmm.
have, you know, these other 30 or 40 animals I
Hmm.
have. Now, if I was like just a tegu breeder in Florida, yeah, that would have completely changed my whole life.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, and that's a great point, especially Florida breeders like having diversity just in case something happens with one species that you have.
Yeah,
You know, and trying to survive that is you know another I think good point of having multiple species and breeding multiple species at once.
yeah.
You know, and you know you're a Florida you know person and stuff like that. You know, like you came here. You came here from Puerto Rico. Or you were born here.
No, I was born here.
You were born here, but you know, so
Yeah.
you've lived, born and raised here in Florida. Has there ever time crossed your mind like, man, you know, I'm tired of FWC. I want to get out of here.
Honestly, that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Not for me. Not for me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know everyone was like, "I'm going to go to Texas," and
Yeah.
it's just, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
I like where I'm at. The laws have not affected me at all,
Hmm.
um, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future when I'm not doing reptiles, yeah, I'd like to go somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I have no intentions of moving at all.
Yeah. And then, you know, you brought the good points. Like when you're not doing, have you thought about that too? Like an exit plan of, you know, of actual breeding. So I'm pretty sure you're going to have animals, reptiles for the rest of your life, you know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
maybe
I
not
mean, as
as,
far as, yeah, like I don't know who. I mean, most of us reptile people keep doing this until we fucking die.
yeah.
Um, but I would like to, obviously, if I'm when I'm older, I would like to trim down the collection
Hmm.
because I'm just one person. I do this all by myself,
Hmm.
and that's already hard as it is because I don't have time to myself at all. There's no vacations. There's no nothing.
Hmm.
Um, so when I'm older, I don't. I want to go somewhere. I want to take my
Yeah.
family out and all that. But yeah, I would trim down the collection to a few stuff. Obviously, my Aldabras are not going anywhere. That's going to be with me forever,
Hmm.
and hopefully to my
Yeah.
kids,
Yep.
and a few species that I just enjoy for myself. Um, the stuff that I breed for like for profit, I would
Hmm.
probably just trim that down completely. Just make it easier for myself to do whatever I wanted to do.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
even small vacations are tough. Me going to Daytona is stressful.
I can
Daytona's my favorite
imagine.
show. Yeah,
Yeah.
Daytona's my favorite show to go to. And I go there. I'm usually there from Wednesday until Monday.
Okay. So
And
you take the extra couple days and, you know, hang
yeah,
out
oh
and
yeah,
stuff like that.
So
Yeah, cool.
the best day is Monday because all the reptile people are gone. So like
Mhm.
the Hilton is just completely clear. There's nobody there. The beach is perfect. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But just doing that one show stresses me out so much because I have no idea what I'm coming home to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or like all these animals in the incubator, like, hey man, you gonna get us out of here? Um, so I do have someone that stays here. So I will have like my mother-in-law, she's here,
Mhm.
and she'll take care of like the animals. She'll spray whatever I need to spray, and the only thing that really needs to eat would be like the tortoise. So she already knows. I already have the stuff like packaged for her
Yeah,
to like just
so
do
she's
whatever.
gotta, yeah, feed them.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everything else is like they're good until I come back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, that's one thing too. Like, I had somebody ask me recently, it's like, oh, what are the downsides of breeding, right? And I think myself, as having a family, wanting to travel and stuff like that, I was like, for me, is the limited time, the limited windows you have to be able to go take a week or even a 2 week vacation somewhere.
Yeah.
It's very limited. Luckily with hognose, like I could brewmate them, so
Yeah.
I get like, for like Christmas and New Year's, we take those 2 full weeks and we'll go visit somebody, or take a trip and stuff, because they're in brumation, um, and babies from that year are fine enough where I could feed them before I leave, and they'll
Yeah.
be okay when I come back. And that's another reason, like, I've held back from getting like a tortoise, or getting like getting lizard species, where like,
Yeah.
damn, the feeding schedule.
So honestly, the tortoises would be fine. They're straight. They're good.
Okay.
Um, it's your lizards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one good thing I miss about like the pipe when I did the pythons
Hmm.
is I could go and just do
Yeah.
what I need to do. I mean, adults were good. I mean, I never
Hmm.
did that with the babies because babies are a whole different thing. But adults, I mean, you could go have a week or two or whatever, and you're good.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, lizards aren't like that. Lizards need to, most of the time they need to eat every single day.
Yeah.
You're there's lights, UVB, all that stuff. They need
Yep.
that.
Hmm.
Um, only a certain amount of my animals are in racks that I kind of just don't have to really do much, and they're good.
Hmm.
But for the most part, everything is. It needs somebody there to kind of watch them.
Hmm.
So, like for instance, if it's so hot outside and there's no rain, then I gotta do that. So
Yeah.
let's say I'm gone, like for instance at Daytona, if let's say it's so hot, there's no rain, um, I need to make sure those those animals are getting hydrated somehow. If you don't have a plan for that, you're going to come back to some crispy animals.
Hmm.
Um, or if it's like wintertime and you're not taking care of your animals and you leave them outside, or there's a cold front that you weren't prepared for, and you still have those animals outside, um, you're fucked. Uh, we're in Florida. I usually have a cutoff time of like what I bring inside because there are animals that are indoor, outdoor. They're actually like on racks, and
Hmm.
I'll wheel them in. So like if it gets like too cold, I'll actually wheel them into my garage. Um, so, but on days where it's like a cold front that you're not planning for, like you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, and that's rough. With Daytona and coming back, I think, to any show that you have to travel, 2 to 3 days and stuff like that. Coming back to a collection and having to, you know, it's like you come back, there's no day off.
I know
It,
it
it
sucks.
is going right back into the fire and
Yeah.
feeding, cleaning. I think is the biggest part of it, right? Like, all
Yep.
right, everything ate before I left. Now I got to fucking do a crazy cleaning. Yeah, it's pretty
So
wild.
the good thing about the outdoor is I don't really clean.
Hmm.
Um, all my indoor stuff for sure that
Yeah.
has to be clean. All my racks, just like what you
Hmm.
have behind you,
Hmm.
I that needs deep cleaning.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I feel you. That when we came back from the Fort Walton show,
Hmm.
um, I had so many animals in the incubator just waiting for me, and
Yeah.
I remember coming home. It was like 3 in the morning by the time I made it home, and I just glanced at the incubator, and I'm just like, crap. Like I got to wake up and put because who knows how long they've been in the incubator for.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like all right, I guess I got to deal with you. I guess I'll sleep for 3 hours. And for me, I don't know about you, but unpacking for a show is the most. That's the part that I hate the most.
Yeah.
Packing is easy. Packing is
Yeah.
great. I don't mind packing. It's
Yep.
the unpacking. That's the
Yeah.
part that is just. It's for me is like the most stressful part.
Yeah. 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 And then, I mean, I've seen the sometimes, the quantity of animals you bring to a reptile show and stuff like that. And, trying to get back to unpacking, I'm, and this is one of the things my wife tells me. She goes, um, it's a hindrance sometimes, but like I'm a control freak sometimes where like I always have to know I count the animals in, I count the animals out and all that stuff. I could just imagine with the different species, the quantities that you have coming back in, settling everything back in, all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh no, it's stressful. Like baby bearded dragons are the
Hmm.
worst. They're the absolute worst because they pretty much have to immediately go into their setups. Like you can't wait the next day. Like you got to
Yeah.
put them in like right there and then you got to like, okay, so this baby goes in here, this baby goes in here. Okay, this baby doesn't play well with other babies, so this one has to be isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're the dragons are the worst when it comes to like that situation.
Hmm.
The other animals are basically like, okay, these are the day geckos. Okay, they go in that cage. All right,
Hmm.
this is that species. They go in that cage. But yeah, the bearded dragons are the one species where it's like, you have to go here. This one has to specifically go over there, and this and that and that and that.
Yeah. That's yeah, and I didn't think about that because, like you said, like the interaction between the dragons, they can become territorial and stuff like that,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
with each other. They're great with humans, but for each other, they're
Yeah, they
assholes.
don't. Yeah, they don't want to be with. They don't want to be with each other at all.
Yeah.
And I tell people that I joke around at reptile shows where I tell the customer because they're like, should we buy like more than one? And I tell people, I said, look, I'd make way more money if I just lied to you, but no, they really honestly don't want to be with another one. Like they're fine.
Hmm.
They are completely fine being by themselves. Just
Hmm.
especially when you have like sometimes you'll keep like 3 or 4 babies together,
Hmm.
and then like they're hungry, so like they see a tail
They
move
start
or a toe
nipping at it.
twitch,
Yeah.
and they just nip, and yeah, and that baby's stressed out, so it doesn't eat anymore, and
Hmm.
so yeah, keep one dragon
For
to
sure.
a
For sure.
cage. Yeah.
It's funny. My wife, that was her first animal she bought for herself, and that was what 2 3 years ago. We went to Daytona, and she was just walking around, and she goes, "I want to buy a bearded dragon." I go, "Okay," and it's funny because like she walks back and forth, and now she has it in a 4 foot 4x2x2 enclosure.
Nice.
And that thing loves his life. And I
Yeah.
actually last year I go, let me brewmate it, and I brewmated it in its enclosure, and it was pretty cool to see like the animal. It burrowed. We have a cave and it burrowed and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And a lot of people don't think about that process of their lifespan too, like of the brumation. Um,
Yeah.
and for them it's pretty easy. It's just dwindling down the heat and stuff like that, the
Yep.
light span.
And sometimes
um
they do it even if you're not trying for them to do it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like a lot of customers, they'll get a dragon, and then once it hits like 6 months or so,
Hmm.
they're like, my dragon is hiding and it's not coming out. It hasn't eaten and it won't come out and bask. And I'm like, okay, it's brewmating. Trust me, it's gonna one day. It's just you're just gonna see it basking again, and you're good. Don't worry about it. And most of the time, actually, 99% of the time, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. And with dealing with customers at all the shows that you do, um how do you deal with like educating the uneducated buyer? Like they're ready to buy but they have no idea of what they're getting themselves
Yeah.
into.
So that's the funny part. So like, if you go to my table and you buy like the most expensive rare animal in the world and you've never had it, for the
Hmm.
most part, you know what it is, and I will never hear from you ever again. Like you'll just
Hmm.
disappear. You'll spend your
Hmm.
$1,000 and disappear.
Yep.
And then I'm like, does he even know like what's going on? But obviously he spent that, he knows. But
Yeah.
then I'll sell, the most inexpensive like leopard gecko or a bearded dragon, and that customer acts like they're just having a giant math equation. Like what? Like you literally have to hold their hand, which obviously I do this for a living, so that's part of the job. I
Yeah.
don't mind doing it, but for the most part, you can read people pretty well, and which are the ones that really need that guidance and education. And then there's some people that that you tell them everything, and when they leave, you know that okay, come Monday, I'm going to have an email from this person for sure. Like I'm going to get a message from this person, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot of that, and luckily I've dealt with all of them pretty well. And there's people that I've sold to that I've held their hand the process, and to this day, years later, they'll still message me with questions, and I still answer them. I still help them out. And in fact, just like you were saying, the brumation, I sold an animal to somebody, and 2 years later, it brumated on its own, and they were freaking out, and then called me, and just like I held their hand when they first bought it as a baby, I held their hand through the whole process of the brumation.
So. That's correct. And I think, with the customer part of it, that's a big part of like, trying to figure out who you need to educate and who already has it figured out. Because sometimes you start giving information, they're looking at you like, okay, I already know all this, and it's almost like you're insulting them,
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to try to read that body language and that interaction.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty good at determining, like, once you ask your first couple questions, you're good. But once you start, like, for instance, like the bearded dragons, like once you say, hey, make sure your UVB's on point, and they look at you like, what? Then you're like, all right, buckle up, because we got to talk.
Yeah. My biggest, my biggest thing I get when I tell like basic like cares like a thermostat, and they're like, a what? A thermostat? Yeah, with the thing that reads the heat. I go, no, that's a thermometer. Like it's a totally different thing. And I've had a good amount of people I have to go like, I'll walk over to Family Reptiles, stuff, and be like, look, this is what you need. You need a thermostat for a heat mat, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's like you said, it's part of the job, it's part of the education. And I think you want to have successful customers, and it means you're successful at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it's cool when you sell to a customer that just wants a pet, and then years later you find out that they're like dabbling in breeding here and there. Like I find that pretty cool.
It is, yeah, man. It's cool to see that what's it called, that evolution of just keeping one animal to eventually breeding, and a lot of times they'll come back to you when they're back at that stage,
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing the shows for years. So like I've seen kids that I've sold stuff to as like, young kids, like teenagers, and now they're like full blown adults at the shows too. And I'm like, well, what the hell? Like,
that's why
you're not a child anymore. Like it's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird because now you're like my competition now. Like that's crazy. It's in a good way, obviously.
No, for sure. And I think I have daughters, and they're fully into the reptile stuff, and I can't wait till one day. I'm hoping it happens, that they have their own table set up at a reptile show. It'll be pretty cool to see that, and see how they evolve with that.
I have nothing but daughters as well, so I know.
Yeah.
Three. I have 3 daughters.
Man, it's crazy. Like now being a dad that has only daughters, I tell people, man, at least with my daughters, I get both best of both worlds. Because they like the reptiles. They're girls still. Girls can do mostly anything the boys can do. So I enjoy being a girl dad, and they become.
Are they teenagers yet or no?
I have one teenager. Okay. She's 14. And another one is 8. So I'm just getting the taste of the teenage.
Yeah, I have 16, 14, and then 4.
Ooh. So you got a double, at the top, man.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of like drama in this house at any given time for like the weirdest thing.
Are they into the reptiles and stuff like that, or it's mostly they're cool to watch and see what you do and stuff like that?
So my 4-year-old is like enamored, like she can't get enough of it. Like she always wants to come out and help me, and she has a name. She has a name for every animal, and cool. My older ones, like they're older, so they
Yeah.
I mean, they're okay with it. I mean, my daughter, one of my daughters, my 14-year-old, she actually does actually make things for the show. So like if you ever go to the show and I have like the crocheted toys,
Yeah.
that's all made by her. She does all
That's
that.
cool.
She's actually come to the shows with me like when she was probably like maybe 12 or 10, maybe
Mm-hmm.
when she was much younger. But
Yeah.
but they're older now, so they have
Yeah.
more important things to
Yeah. You know, it's another thing too.
worry
It's like,
about.
you know, it's the thing, like, you know, every person goes through their teenage years, like dad is doing it. So it's not really the cool thing to do.
It's yeah,
So I
yeah.
think they go through that phase where like same thing where
He's playing
my
with his lizards again.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. It's interesting to see that. Um, so we're gonna wrap this up, man.
Yeah.
Last question is like, you know, and I've been having this question, and I'm gonna do two questions now because I just
Okay.
realized it. You recently went through a name change.
Yeah.
What was the decision on that?
All right. So for years, literally since 2007, I've been
Hmm.
Serpentera Exotics.
Hmm.
Um, and it's been great. I love the name. I still love the name,
Hmm.
but it's gotten to the point where people, because I don't really show my face a lot. Like it's very, other than reptile shows, you don't see me.
Yeah, yeah,
If I'm posting on Instagram, it's my hand and an animal or just
yeah,
the animal, but you rarely see me
yeah.
because it's about the animals and not me. Um, so people would come up to me like years after years of doing this, people would come up to me at shows or whatever, and they would say like, you would say, because they know me as Eddie at the shows. Eventually,
Hmm.
even customers know me as Eddie. Everyone there knows me as Eddie. And they would be like, "What's your business name again?" Like people that I've known for years would be like, "Oh,
Mm.
that's your, I didn't know that." Or I had kind of like the opposite where people would see the animals that I have at the shows and they'd go, "Wow, you got to meet this guy. He's on Instagram, Serpentera Exotics." And I'm like, "That's
It's like,
me. I'm that guy." Um, I've had that a lot.
yeah.
So finally, I was like, you know what? I got to make this simple. I got to make this easy for everybody. Um, Eddie Soto Exotics. Boom. You say Eddie. If you go to a reptile show and say, "Hey, where's Eddie?" Wait, my thing went out.
I got you. Not yet. Hold on.
All right, it's
Yeah,
gonna
we're
come in.
back now. Yep.
All right, you're back now. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, people, if you go to a reptile show, any given show, and you say, "Hey, where's Eddie?" You're gonna know who I'm talking about, or they're
Hmm.
gonna know who you're talking about. You'll find me. If you said Serpentera Exotics, even if it's someone who knew me, would be like, "I don't know who Serpentera Exotics is."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I changed it, and it's so much easier now. I
Yeah.
do miss the other name, but I think this is the
Yeah.
better route to go.
And you know what? I wouldn't have met you or maybe even run into your social media if I wouldn't have been doing the Repticons.
Yeah,
You know, and what it, you know, because like you said, you're very I'll say like behind the scenes, right? You know, you have your animals, you have your social media,
yeah.
and then but if you go to the Repticons, you go to the local Florida shows, you are well known. Um, have you thought about doing more social media things and stuff like that to, you know, be more of just out of the Florida scene?
I have thought of that. I've just
Yeah.
never done it. Like I've
Yeah.
had a YouTube channel for since YouTube was a thing. So
Okay.
if you look at my YouTube, uh,
Yeah.
it says join 2006 or seven probably.
Yeah.
I've posted back in the ball python days. Um, I was that kid that was posting my ball pythons and
Hmm.
my rack and all that stuff, but it was never me. It was still my hands,
Hmm.
and it was just never like for whatever reason, it was just never my thing. I never posted
Yeah.
that much. I don't know why. I just never did. But who knows? Maybe I will delve more into uh, posting
Yeah.
videos and all that stuff. I just haven't
Yeah.
gotten there yet. I'm
Yeah.
too busy taking care of animals.
That's what I'm saying. You know, finding the time, it's a lot,
Yeah,
man. You
yeah,
know, with me starting to the smaller collection that I have doing the social media, it's a lot easier. You know, I have friends that have larger hognose collections, and they're in that same thing. Like, oh, I want to do more social media. I want to do some YouTube, but finding the time to do it, it's so hard. You know,
yeah,
especially when you have, 200 breeders, 700 babies a year and stuff like that. To find that escape to be able to do it, it's
Yeah.
hard.
I mean, even just posting simple things like the video that you just showed of the lizard that I was holding, the black one, the Galosha, that was on my phone for probably a month before I posted it, just because I didn't have the time to make a caption. I didn't have time to do little hashtags and all that stuff. And, I posted that at a red light while I was driving. Like, so I don't have time to sit there and say and post a video of myself like, hey guys, it's Eddie and this is what we got going. Like I don't have that time.
Man.
So the only time you ever see stuff like that is when you go to a reptile show. So if you go to a reptile show, that's probably the most social aspect that you'll ever see me in.
Yeah.
For now.
No, and I totally get it. I totally get it with the size that you have, the quantity of animals. It's a lot, man. But I mean, now you have your name, Eddie. Eddie Soto Exotics. That's your business name now, so that's pretty cool to see. And being able to like get people to that new Serpentera and now associate Eddie Soto Exotics. Is I think it would be a cool thing to see too, man. And my last question is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now within, either species or what you're breeding and stuff like that?
I would, in 5 years, I would like to have it maintained to a part where I could just go outside and enjoy my animals without, worrying about like the money aspect. I just want to go out and enjoy, just basically how we all got into this hobby, just enjoying the animals, and that's it. Not worrying about, oh, I got to wait for this thing to produce and that this has to produce or I'm not going to eat today. Like, I just want to go outside and just sit down and enjoy my animals and just drink a beer and just look at my tortoises or something without stressing out about a bill or something.
Yeah. That's
where I want to be.
Yeah. And the breeding part is a double-edged sword, right? Because once you have that aspect of you're producing, you're expecting to produce, it becomes a stressful part of it.
It does.
And it is fun. I think, figuring out the magic number of what you can maintain and what can, maintain properly, is going to sustain your life. It's a very hard to try to figure that out, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've
been doing this, like I said, I've been breeding since 2007 and I still haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
I'm getting close, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. The 5 year, and 5 years, that's like anything that happens major is within the 5 years marks, like anything major, stuff like that. So,
I mean, 5 years ago, I didn't even think I'd have be living in this house, because we're on a decent sized property.
Yeah.
That had a building already. I would have never thought I would have had that. So who knows 5 years from now what's actually going to be happening in my life, when that happens. So
yeah, man. Any last thing you want to say before we say bye to our viewers and stuff like that? Any species or topic we didn't touch upon that you want to quickly go over?
No, I think we're good. I mean, if you see me at a show, feel free to come up to me. Message me if you have any questions on husbandry of anything. Message me or see what I have, or just don't be afraid to come up to me at the shows. I'm literally at every show in Florida, and if you're going to be at Daytona, find me and let's party.
Do you know your table number so people know for Daytona?
I don't know the number, but I will be the first end cap that you see in the second room.
Okay.
So literally at the moment, as soon as you walk into the second room, you'll see me.
All right. So you guys there. He has Orlando coming this weekend. So make sure you stop by. We're both going to be there. Then after Orlando, what is Daytona?
So after Orlando, there's a break. There's no shows until Daytona.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I'm still thinking about it. I think there's a South Carolina show. I may jump out and do that because having no shows for this long is kind of weird for me. So we'll see, but Daytona for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. If If you guys are in any of the Florida Repticons or any like reptilian issues in in Florida, make sure to stop by their booth, say
Yep,
hi.
I'll be there.
Um, his link to his social media and stuff like that is in the description below. So make sure you guys go follow him. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel here. If you're watching the replay, make sure to drop a super thanks for us with the support. Eddie, thank you again for the time. With the amount of species you have, I think we could probably talk for another 2 hours.
Oh yeah,
And
easy.
not be even scratching the surface.
Yeah, I'm sure we
Um,
missed so much stuff. So I'm sure there's
yeah,
someone listening that's like, they didn't even talk about this or whatever.
yeah. So I think we're gonna have I'm gonna have you definitely back for maybe multiple different episodes and maybe
Yeah,
concentrate on one species and just go through the down dirty of like the husbandry and all that stuff.
yeah,
Especially some of the like the Canary Island stuff that you're just breeding, and maybe a couple months from now you have a little more info and more what's it called, advice for the people that might be wanting to get into those.
yeah,
um
definitely.
but guys, like I said, thank you again. We'll see you guys on the next one, and good night to everybody.